Hi everyone, I'm James and this is my Spitfire. In today's video we've got another box of presents to go through. So let's have a look. Okay, here's our first lot of components, mostly for the diff. We have bushes and washers for the front mounts, new bushes and the bolt for the rear mount, new studs to mount the leaf spring on top of the diff, and new bushes for the eyes at the end of the leaf spring, as well as new bushes and bolts for the swing arms. So as you can see, I've gone for blue poly bushes for the most part. The only reason we've got these red ones was they only on the website had yellow ones in stock, but instead I ended up with red ones. So we've gone from comfort at one end of the scale to performance at the other. I don't know how much difference that'll make, but if necessary I'll go out and buy some others later on. So the rear suspension definitely needs some new bushes. See here, this is not really in a very good state at all, and same goes for most of the other bushes. Some of them are better than others, but they all seem to be original, so I'll be swapping all those out for some nice poly bushes. Here we see my random assortment of studs holding down the leaf spring for the rear suspension. Definitely in need of some attention. Okay, this next lot of parts is for the doors and the boot lid. We have plastic thingies to go in behind the door handles and window winders. We have a new door handle and window winder for the passenger side door. We have the pins to go in and fit all of those, and new springs to go in behind them. We also have new locks for both doors. Ones on there are worn out and missing keys. Same goes for the boot lid, so new latch for that with new keys. And lastly, we have new hinges for the boot because one of the current hinges has a broken pin on it, so it needs to be replaced. You can see here on the driver's door that I have some of the right parts but not all of them. And I've actually, on the passenger side, already taken the door card out to start sorting everything out. So here we see one of my existing door locks, very loose. There's actually just a hose clip in behind it holding it in place. And obviously I'll also need to do some welding on the door to make sure the hole's the right shape so the lock is held in the right orientation. Okay, let's have a look at the boot latch. So inside here we have the latch itself, which is essentially just a hook retained in a bracket with a square recess for the lock to locate in. The lock itself is in two parts. You have the handle and the bracket that it sits in. It actually locks onto this bracket, and that's the yeah, this actually has locating lugs to hold it in place in the boot and get it in the right spot. At some stage I'm going to sand all this down. There's a lot of bog around here, so it's not the best, but if I get it sitting exactly right, it does actually locate properly and not spin. Okay, so that's all done now, all working. See the latch coming down. That actually adjust exactly where the bracket on the inside sat so that the handle was located properly, and I've also added a second nut on the shaft to lock that in place. If we shut it, we can shut it to there, and we can lock it so it won't open. Very good. Okay, here we have a bunch of parts for the rear brakes. We have the clips that hold the cylinders in place on the back. At the moment I only have one out of the 4 parts required, and one of the cylinders is held in by a large C-clip. The boots are also non-existent, so a couple of new boots to go on the back of the cylinders. Onto the handbrake side of things, we have a bunch of nuts to go into that system. We have the square ones for the adjustment point, and I thought these were going to be half nuts to fit better in the system, but they're just normal ones. But nevertheless, we've got them now. They should work okay. We have clevis pins for the brake drum end of the handbrake, and also new anchor points and springs for where the handbrake cable attaches to the brake drum. And the last thing is just a couple of brake drum screws to replace the very rusty ones that are on there at the moment. Right. Okay, so we have a look in here behind one of the rear brake drums. You can see that, that's that C-clip I was talking about holding in the cylinder. It's not exactly correct. And also the handbrake cable end has a rather weak spring on it, and we're missing most of the hardware that should be there, nuts and things. So that's in need of some attention. Okay, now on to our last lot of miscellaneous parts. We have a new filler neck for the gas tank to replace the worn one that's in there at the moment. We have some shims for the front suspension, so I can adjust that if I need to. Onto some teeny tiny parts. We have grub screws for the trunnion lubrication points to block that off. And we also have some right angle grease nipples to go wherever I need them. Basically, most of the lubrication points on the car are directly below something else I've found, so some right angle ones will make life a lot easier. Now we have some washers and O-rings for the carburetor bowls, fuel bowls. I've discovered the other day that one of them is leaking out the output, so I'm going to hopefully fix that with these. We have a locating tool for the clutch plate. That'll come in very handy shortly when I refit the transmission. And we have some parts for the rear bumpers. We have the overrider rubber inserts to keep everything protected, some rubber washers to help them mount properly, and the correct length bolts to replace the main bolts for the top of the overriders. And lastly, we have some parts for the taillights. We have new gaskets and some nice shiny chrome screws to go on the top of them to replace the random ones that are in there at the moment. So we see here the state of the current filler neck for the gas tank. Probably the original one. It's rather worn, and yeah, definitely need to get that sorted out. And here's the leak I was talking about coming from the carburetor fuel bowl. Just one of them leaking, but I may as well sort out both of them. The rear bumpers are actually in half decent condition, but yeah, just missing some hardware like the correct bolts and proper rubber washers and things like that. So I'll attend to that. Okay, let's fix these tail lights. Right, here we have one of the old gaskets. I'm sure this is original, based on the fact that it is very no good anymore. New screw and gaskets. Get that sitting nicely. These gaskets are just foam rubber. Just sit in about the right place and push through the heading pins. There we go. And most importantly, this little latch or retaining bump down the bottom needs the gasket there to hold it securely. Without it, as I've had with the other tail light, the lens just wants to fall out. Oops. And what's happening here is the screw's wanting to bind on the gasket and wind it up around itself, which I do not want at all. Right, different approach. I'm going to press down on the gasket with the lens while I screw the screw. The trouble I'm having is I think the screw's bottoming out of the original thread. There we go. It's been cross-threaded 100 times in the past. Just needed to be run in a bit. Let's try this again. On. Right, that's that done. Right, that's it for today's video. Please consider liking and subscribing, and if you have any comments or questions, drop them in the comment section below. Next time we'll probably be working on the Spitfire's transmission, so see you then.